Welcome, divas and dudes. So glad to have you. We are going to start if you are ready. We have a fabulous class today. This one's been, I think, highly anticipated. I've been talking about natto for months now, and I've done quite a bit of research, and I even purchased some from this fabulous place in New York. But you will see, now that you've heard this name, you will see that it is very common in Japanese stores. It's really part of the fabric of their culture. And so I'm hoping that I will open your eyes to this wonderful food, and you'll have a new appreciation for something that, of course, is very unique. It's got a very unusual flavor. It completely highlights the umami flavor. And I know that's a little vague for us, but we kind of call that meat. So it's a really interesting blend of not quite bitter, not quite sour, not quite salty, and not quite sweet. Something kind of in the middle of all those flavors. That's the umami flavor. And so what I wanted to do today is just get you excited about this this ingredient and then be adventurous. So I even, like I said, purchased some, so we're going to sample it. And don't worry, I won't give you a large sample because I know it's very unusual, but just be ready to experiment, okay? So this beautiful lady is the superfood specialist. She is truly a scientist that I think is so fun to watch. She is Ann Yatanani, and she calls herself a cheerleader for sharing the wonders of the natto world. And so, like I said, this is something that's common in Japan. It's eaten for breakfast. It's usually served over rice, and so I'm going to show you lots of different ways to serve it, but it's very traditional. Yet, most Americans have not ever heard of it, but that is changing. Even the cardiologists are starting to perk their ears because of the wonderful benefits that natto can perform. So she is by trade a microbiologist. She calls herself an urban farmer of bugs, which I think is so fun. It's a very unique way to, of course, do fermentation. And, over the past months, we've been talking about healthy gut biome. We've been talking about different types of fermentation. Can you think of any foods that you know now that are fermented foods? Kimchi, yes, exactly. And last week, if you were in class, what fermented food did we get to try? The sourdough bread, which is, of course, really common for us. We get that. We're ready to enjoy that. And in fact, I love Lindsay's story about how sourdough kind of developed, and it was the cowboys that would tuck a piece of fermented dough into their saddle pockets and bring it out and, add to it some water and some more stuff and turn this into a little patty that they could cook on the stove, or I should say fire, no stove. But how cool is that? And so truly these fermented foods have found a place in our culture because A, we didn't always have refrigerators, and B, we found that eating these foods actually tasted good and helped us with our healthful gut. So this is the way that you will see it in Japanese stores or other Asian stores. It's packed in colorful little square packages. Natto is known for its benefit of protein, of fiber, and of course, the Herald vitamin K. Now, I've taught you a lot about vitamin K. Anybody remember what it's Herald for? Dun 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 dun. Bone health. Bone health. And vitamin K is so critical because it helps get the calcium where it needs to go. Where does calcium need to go? Into the bones. Where do we not want it to stay? Yes, in the arteries. So calcification of arteries is not a good thing. That makes them stiff and not able to be able to work the blood flow throughout the body. So vitamin K is really important. Now we can get vitamin K from leafy greens, and then our healthy gut biome can turn it into another bioactive form of vitamin K, but we can also get it from fermented foods. So this beautiful stuff is sticky, it's gooey, it's very strange. Some people say it has a very odd smell. Some people say it has a very obtuse flavor. So those of us that are adventurous today are going to try it.
So it looks like that.
It definitely looks like that.
Down like that.
It is incredibly stringy. Look at that
Okay, it is
face.
slimy. Okay, let me explain.
Slimy, gooey,
It is slimy
stringy.
and gooey and weird. I would throw up if I ate it.
Oh no.
No.
Now just quit that, Seema. Goodness. Now,
No, I will try it.
has
But what I'm
anybody-
saying, I've tried it many.
Yes.
That's what I ate for 6 weeks.
that's what you've eaten before. Has anybody tried like camembert cheese in Europe?
Yeah.
That's also considered smelly, gooey, gross.
Great.
Nobody would
Great.
eat. And we consider it in many circles a luxury to have, a very special food. So don't be too swayed by Miss Seema saying that it would make her throw
I
up.
will eat it because it's delicious, but you have to get past the initial.
Well, and that's the thing. So
Texture.
some texture too. So some I had a family member that just went to Hawaii and did a luau. Anybody ever do that? Well, on the luau was some poi. And she tasted that and said, that is the nastiest stuff I've ever had. And again, culturally specific foods will without a doubt have some strangeness, some uniqueness, mainly because they're not in our culture. But when they're in the culture of their home, it's something that is revered. What can you think of in the Mexican culture that we white people would think was absolutely awful, but Hispanics love? Menudo! Yes!
Oh, yeah.
I would throw up if I had to eat menudo. So the reality is I love experimenting with cultures because we know that so often cultures from around the world have some secrets that we want to know about. So here's this beautiful lady, and she has really raised this whole idea of natto to superfood status. So here's what it looks like. She calls herself a nerd. She says, I love the science behind amazing food. And this is why I love this lady. We are sisters at heart because, of course, I consider myself a food scientist. I love to figure out things. I love to figure out flavor, texture, how to combine foods so that not only they taste amazing, but they also give us a great wealth of nutrition. So that's exactly what she considers with her new company called Nature Food or Nurture Food. Let me show you the beautiful jar. And so she even went so far as to have her logo have some meaning, which I really love. If you can get a close-up of this, but basically it is a mathematical equation that embodies synergy. And so how cool is that? You know, it's me trying to figure out how to make my little palm guy or my pomegranate look like it represents so much symbolism. And so the idea is that the synergy of two ingredients, soybeans and a culture, now transform this simple, humble food, the soybean, into something that has truly amazing qualities. And so she really has put so much thought into it. I just love the whole idea around it. Now let's talk about the process. She has truly used her science hat and created this absolutely amazing process. Now, the good news is, if you have tried natto, Seema, I'm hoping that this one will be far and above better. In fact, she has gone to meetings for all around the world. So primarily the Japanese that are considering themselves experts in natto, as well as newbies from the the European bloc countries. They've gone to these big events and shared ideas, and hers is truly reveled in its high quality because she is so particular about how it's processed and grown, and then of course preserved and served. So cleaning, agitating, dumping the water out over and over, 10 times she cleans these beans. She even goes so far to say that she prides herself in laying eyes on every single bean. She lays them out in a big plastic tub and is sorting through them for anything that has a slight off color, doesn't look like the right shape. That makes me think of all of us when we're gardening and we want to have all these beautiful veggies that are just beautiful and perfect.
So it's a cheese made out of beans.
It becomes a cheese-like process, and it is made out of soybeans. So After it's soaked, it starts to, it doubles in size, and then she starts to spray it with that special inoculation. So look at these beautiful beans. They're very homogeneous in color. They're all grown very organically. And guess what country they come from? The vast majority of these specialty soybeans. U.S. Isn't that crazy? And not even just anywhere in the U.S., but North Dakota. Crazy. So you see the black ones up above, and then these beautiful brown, light brown tan soybeans are grown for the entire world in our beautiful states, so mainly of North Dakota. And again, they're non-GMO, so they're not your run-of-the-mill soybeans that we feed cattle. They're very special. They've been cultivated for 5 generations to get this really special soybean. And so I love that. Not only are they organic and non-GMO, but they've also been really specified to have these great qualities. Of course, protein, fiber, and all those phytochemicals. You know, we've talked a lot about phytoestrogens. We're trying to really put at rest the fear that soybeans are bad for you because of the phytoestrogens. When they are from a plant grown really well, they are a good source of nutrients, not a cancer promoter. And so that's what makes this so exciting. So again, it's a week-long process that Anne puts these specialty soybeans through. They get washed and washed some more, and then they get soaked. And she's really a stickler for making sure all impurities are taken out. And again, as a true scientist, she loves to make sure that all those details are correct. Notice that she's got extreme hygienic processes, always gloved, always in a really hygienic environment. And so I just love that. She's a true microbiologist.
So there's no machine. She does this by hand.
By hand, yes. Because truly, it doesn't take a lot of mechanized work. The beans are not smashed. The beans are not really done anything special. They're soaked, and then they're put into just the right temperature, you'll see this in a minute, so that the right bacteria can continue to grow. So we could not just grow natto. We would have to order the special enzyme or the special bacteria. So here she is, the Bacillus subtilis. I love that word. Bacillus subtilis is the special organism that you order, and it's grown in a specialty lab, and then she puts it in a little spray with some water and inoculates all of the pans of these soybeans. So after they've been washed and then they've been soaked, then it's time to spray the product onto the soybeans to let that grow. And that's when it turns into a cheese. Because cheese is really what? Fermented dairy. Or now we've got even fermented almond, we've got fermented coconut, right? For people that are have an allergy to dairy. So think of it as, instead of fermented milk, we're doing a fermented bean. And then it turns, and that's why that stringy texture is really present, because just like having a texture around a cottage cheese or a regular cheese, you're seeing it around the beans. So here she's measuring it and really looking at this very special bacteria. And one thing to be aware of is the healthy gut bacteria has many different varieties in our gut. And so this one is a very specific one, and it is not found in any of the other commercially made probiotic foods, only found in natto. So here she is spraying the culture onto the soybeans. And you can see here in the lower section, she's got all of her containers sealed and marked, and they go through a rotation process because she tests for pH. She tests for the growth of the bacteria to make sure that it's coming to just the right temperature, texture, and flavor for it to be ready for the next step. So look at this slide. This is so interesting to me. Can you see the strings? So that, she says, is the funnest part of this whole process. Is she goes into great depths describing when she pulls the film off, the amount of tug that this growth is creating and hooking up to the top. And again, it reminds me of when I lived with my French family and we had all these very moldy, unusual cheeses. Anybody like blue cheese?
I love it.
Yeah, I do too. And you take off the wrapper, and it looks really gooey. And you know, we always think the more the better. And of course, what did we learn from the culture of blue cheese? A very special mold. We learned how to get some really important injections, right? We learned how to get really important medicines. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in the microbial world, and of course, she holds no bars in making sure that this is very special.
So
And
she just so happened came upon this? Like,
no, for thousands of years, natto has been part of the Japanese culture.
oh,
And you can tell by her picture she's Japanese, and so she learned from experts that are, you know, generation after generation making this. And again, it's such a part of the Japanese culture that you don't get this fancy bottle in Japan. You get these little styrofoam tubs that you open, and they talk about how important it is to really stir it. They say it officially 100 times you have to stir it, and that helps to aerate it and let all those little strings kind of soften, and it really gets the flavor going. And in that little packet will always come a secret sauce, a natto sauce, and some mustard. And so if you Google this, you'll see these cute little Japanese ladies and guys too showing you how to prepare it. And it's literally 100 times stirring this little container, adding the mustard and adding the natto sauce, and then serving it over rice. I explored a little more and found some other folks that like to be more adventurous. And I thought, well, that makes sense for us. Let's be adventurous. Why not? And so I brought some sriracha, some avocado, of course, a little bit of curry spice. So once you realize that it's a base food and that now it's so much about what you mix in it, now it's just a game changer, right? Because now you can eat it with flavors that you find recognizable. Kimchi is one that, you know, we are familiar with. But the first time I tried kimchi, I thought it was kind of nasty. And then I got used to it, right? It's an unusual taste. Same thing with the chow chow that we made, if you guys were with me on that. So remember that when there's a fermented process going on, that umami flavor is really coming to the top, and your palate's going, whoa, what's that? Because we don't eat it very often. We don't recognize it very often. So, you know, it makes it kind of a fun adventure to try. But I thought this was such a beautiful picture because it really shows the process that this is very much an alive food.
but they can't grow the beans where they're at. They get them from.
They can, but it's not nearly as high quality. That's why I was mentioning the traditional natto that you would buy in Japan is not made by these super special beans all the time. You know, some of them will be. And almost everything that comes from Japan has been frozen and thawed. And so that changes the flavor and the texture. What do you think it does to the bioavailability of the bacteria?
Yeah, it feels it.
Yeah, it really denatures it. Now maybe some will be left, but nothing like this. And so that's why I wanted to highlight this beautiful lady's creation, because it's always fresh. It's never frozen because that affects the health benefits, but it also affects the flavors. And then, like I mentioned, the flavors that you put it with are going to really amplify whether or not it's the food that you enjoy or not. Can you think of another food that tastes really plain by itself?
Tofu.
Yeah, tofu is nasty by itself. If you just sliced off a chunk and ate it out of the container, you would never go back, right? Yeah, but we marinate it, we add texture, we of course can pan fry it, or we can bake it, and it changes a lot of the qualities. And so that's I think what makes it so fun.
I say, what's the point of tofu?
Well, and what's neat is this lady, because she's such a pioneer, is really getting other people excited about what we can do with this. And, you know, foodies in the U.S. are all about unusual and culturally specific foods, because that really gets them to wave a flag of, you know, ethnicity. And so she's worked with a few chefs to bring it to life and look at ways that we can make it tasty and a little more friendly to the American palate. So she's worked with a couple of chefs, and what makes this so exciting is now that we can get Americans to consider it, Now what we're going to start doing is having the doctors understand the real benefits. It's kind of like with gluten-free. You know, for a long time, gluten-free was so poorly done, and we needed to elevate the interest. And then we had to go to the kind of back corner and say, okay, healthcare professionals, help us tell people why this is healthy and why it's valuable, because it's going to really help people's intestine if they have an allergy, for sure. And so it just takes a little practice, but also it takes grouping in with other foodies to be able to help people understand what makes it kind of fun. So let's talk a little bit about vitamin K. We mentioned that it's king for bone health. When we look at you know, maybe postmenopause, or if you have been taking antibiotics for a long time and your gut biome is depleted, we show problems with osteoporosis, men and women. And so the U.S. or the general plan for the healthcare professionals is to what? Give you calcium and what else? Vitamin D. Calcium and vitamin D. And a lot of nutrition experts are saying, say no to calcium in a pill. Or if you do take it, make it a very small amount and do it maybe once or twice in the day, not a large dose at once. And that's because we're finding that too much oral calcium does a lot of bad for our cardiovascular system. And it doesn't get into the bones, which is where we need it. Of course, kidney stones are also a fear. But even if you don't get kidney stones, it doesn't mean that too much calcium wouldn't affect the wrong organ, which is the cardiovascular system. So I love the fact that this product can be a way to get your vitamin K. Now, I do know some folks have been trying to supplement with vitamin K, and we have different varieties. There's a K7 and I think a K9. There's different versions. To me, that's so complicated. How about we just eat foods, and this might be one of them. But other foods that have vitamin K, can you remember? Leafy greens are great for vitamin K. And so as long as our biome is healthy, it can be turned into this other form. So there are 3 unique properties of this beautiful natto that make it a superfood. So let's talk a little bit about those. I've mentioned a lot about it being a probiotic. So let's just remember, what does a probiotic do? Yeah, it brings in some more bacteria. So sometimes just more of the same number, same type, but increasing your number. Sometimes it adds variety. And we learned in the months past that to have a healthy gut biome, we need variety and we need numbers. When does our biome really get established? Anybody remember? In infancy. So when you're in utero, all the way up until about age 3, your biome is forming. If you are born naturally via the vaginal canal, you get a really good inoculation of your mom's healthy gut biome. Now, what if you had C-section? If you came into the world via C-section, you miss out on that. And what's kind of cool, I remember I mentioned this during that class, even now some moms, if they're in a really good hospital, I guess, have the option to give a vaginal swab to the baby orally as soon as it's born to give it that important inoculation, right? I know it sounds crazy, but the whole idea is that they really benefit from that organic source of healthy gut biome that came from the mama and now can be part of the baby. Now, what's new? You know, we think of adults that have chronic GI problems, and we're looking at even doing something similar to an adult. Exactly, fecal transplant. How crazy is that? Now, sometimes that's dangerous though, because the variety is too different. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we get to the next slides. But just remember that the probiotics really evolved in our culture because it helped our gut, but it was secondarily to being a way to preserve foods. Something that's fermented can live for a lot longer time because it has a good population of a healthy bacteria so that it kind of wards off the bad bacteria. For example, you can leave yogurt out for, you can have it in your lunch and eat it the next day and it's fine because it's got plenty of the active lactobacillus And so it prevents other things from growing. Yes, it eventually will, but it slows it down. And I just mentioned the most concentrated form of vitamin K. And then number 3 is kind of fun too. There is an enzyme that was named after natto, so-called natto kinase, that is so exciting for the cardiologists. We're finding that this enzyme is a really effective blood thinner. And it's even been shown in a couple of studies to be able to clear blood clots. How cool is that? So, when we look at the Asian population and we see that they seem to be so much healthier than other countries or other cultures, could some of that be because of their wonderful ability to have a healthy gut biome and keep their cardiovascular system healthy and strong because of the vitamin K and the natto kinase and the fact that they eat probiotics? So often we think that white rice is bad for us and they eat it all the time. But it's not just the white rice. They eat it with so many other things, one being this beautiful product called natto. So here's a picture of it when it's in its fermented stage, and you can see the little bits of the hairs or the stringiness just sitting right there on top. And I just love this picture because it helps us see that it's very much alive. And so that natto kinase is something to be on the lookout for in the medical world, because again, the cardiologists that are really forward thinkers, instead of giving you a pill, instead of doing surgery, what if we were to try to introduce something like natto? So after all this, I do really want to also kind of set the stage. I feel like, we are almost tempted to think more is better. If somebody's been ill or if somebody's not feeling well, you'll often hear people say, oh, take probiotics. Get this newfangled pill. Take these pills and it'll cure you. And I've kind of alluded to this in some of my talks because I'm really not an advocate of taking a pill as a probiotic for this reason. So I was so excited to see that a couple of the experts out there are really helping us see, wait a minute, fermented foods is not a cure-all, and probiotics is definitely not a cure-all. There's a lot of really interesting studies looking at different cultures. There's one guy that talks a lot about the African culture, and when he studies these guys' poop, he's amazed at how diverse their biome is. And so his logic, and they're really healthy. They live well into their hundreds. And so, the logical thought is, well, it must be because they have such a variety in their biome. Maybe we should all have the same thing. And what's important to know is that our bodies have evolved with our number and our variety. So it can be risky to put in too much of newness. I often say that taking a probiotic is like bringing in a whole new army, and they have their own system of organization, of artillery, and of strategy. And you bring them into your current army, and they don't like that new group. And so there's this fight going on, who's going to be in charge? And so that's the same idea with your tummy. If you try to bring in too much or too much variety, it could be risky. But what we do want to do is understand how in our own biome we can get just enough. And so eating it with foods is always safer than trying to take a pill. Trying something like kefir, or here with natto, eating a little bit, seeing how your tummy reacts, is always smart rather than trying to do a big change. And even if you had the pills that were really active, that could be a problem. Sometimes the pills are denatured, and so you feel like, well, I didn't really have any symptoms, and that's a good thing, but it could be that those pills didn't have anything active anyway. It was a placebo. But the idea around it in general is fermented foods helps our gut create short-chain fatty acids. And this is the most important part of having a healthy gut. If we've got short-chain fatty acids being created in our gut, that means that our immune system is strong and vital. And I talked a lot about this in the past, that our gut is responsible for making a lot of really important hormones. Serotonin, for example. And really the fight or flight so making us feel nervous. If you have a gut instinct or a gut feeling, or your stomach is afraid, it really makes sense. That's because we're getting neurochemistry that has a vital role in our well-being, all in our gut. So what we've learned is that we need to be careful. And if you have a situation where you know you've got celiac or you've got Crohn's or SIBO, anybody not know what SIBO is? That's small intestine bacterial overgrowth. More and more people are, getting this diagnosis because fortunately doctors are getting a lot more astute at trying to figure out what is going on in your tummy. It wasn't long ago when you'd go to a doctor or even a GI specialist and with a tummy ache, and he would say, well, you have IBS. I was like, wait a minute, what do you mean IBS? Irritable bowel syndrome. We don't know what it is. It's just that. And they didn't really know how to treat it. Well, what's nice is that we do have a celiac test. So if you know what kind of IBS you have, like celiac, what can we do? Take out foods that have gluten, right? Because that's the irritant. If you have Crohn's disease, very much around our emotional state and the health of our gut. If we know that's what we have, we can really zero in on how to treat that the very best we can. SIBO, same thing. A bacteria that is overpopulating, and it's usually because the gastric motility is so slow that the food is hanging out too long in the small intestine, causing unwanted bacteria. So yes, in a lot of ways, these intestinal problems can be helped with fermented foods, but you have to really know what's going on before you try to treat. We don't want to just throw a bunch of fermented foods into your diet if you're having a tummy ache. It's really important to first know what your IgA levels are. And so in this research, I found a couple of resources. So if you're interested, let me know. But you can understand what's happening in your autoimmune system. Because if you overdo it and you start doing a lot of crazy bugs into your intestine, now your immune system will really react and it'll really step up and of course make your symptoms worse, and you could start having a class of autoimmune problems, which of course we don't want to go down that path. So our body is so smart. It knows how to really work the best. We just have to know how to feed it the best. And what is it in our culture that has really hurt our biome? Anybody want to guess?
Processed foods.
Yeah, processed foods and antibiotics. I mean, even as a kid, I took antibiotics indefinitely because I had acne. And I wish my mom would have said, well, I don't know, do we really need to give you tetracycline unlimited? So who knows? And now I have Graves' disease. Any correlation? Autoimmune class, taking antibiotics for a long time when I was a kid? Who knows? So those things we won't know, but knowledge is power. Understanding and paying it forward, you can help your family members go, be really careful taking antibiotics and be really careful doing lots of processed foods and be really careful with stress. Make sure you get enough sleep and make sure you exercise so that you have a sense of well-being, because absolutely it pays off in the long run because of your healthy biome. So this is this beautiful lady, and yes, it's as stringy as it can be. And now in the next few minutes, I want to be able to share with you some of my my little creation. And again, don't worry if you don't want to sample it. I won't call you chicken to your face. To your face. So here is this beautiful natto, and you can see the beautiful strings. And I'm going to stir and stir 100 times. I'm going to pass it around so you can get a little whiff. But notice how it really gets those little cheese. It really gets it going.
So could you put it in a food processor and then it just turns?
Of course you could. You can do all kinds of things. Now, one of the guys that I read said to get used to it, there's one that you buy that is shredded. And so then you don't see the bean separately. But I'm like, you guys, just go for it. Just take a little sample. Don't be weenies. No, I'm kidding.
I'll try it.
Right? I'm going to dress it up a lot. But I'm going to walk around really quick because I want you to get a little whiff. You don't have to get too close. You'll get a smell of it right away.
That's pretty cool.
This is the umami aroma. You want it? A little whiff?
Looks weird.
Very
It is.
strong.
Yes, so 100 times, and then I'm going to put it onto the rice. Definitely unusual. I'm going to put a little tiny, I've tasted it before, so I'm going to kind of go with what I think will be desirable. I'm going to put a little bit of salt, little pinch of salt. Because remember, when it's made, there's no salt added. It's just the inoculation of the special stuff and the beans. I'm going to do a little squeeze of lemon. So again, this is a breakfast food. So don't think that the Japanese have toast and egg. They don't. They don't. I'm going to put a little bit of my curried up spice.
Like here, how you have continental breakfast in certain inns, they will have morning breakfast with your room and board.
Right?
And there will be basically it's fish, more fish, rice, natto.
Right? All kinds of interesting things. Now,
And some pickles like radish and whatnot.
yeah, like fermented veggies. So remember with kimchi, it's kind of big pieces. This is the thing that I don't love about kimchi. That's why with my chow chow, I really like making it smaller pieces. I think it's a little, I don't know, just a little rough. But this is Napa cabbage. And, usually kimchi is made with some kind of sriracha, so it'll have a little bit of heat to it. So I'm not going to put a lot on there.
Did you buy that or make it?
I bought this. I bought it.
The pepper is gochujang.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, you were absolutely right. So now I'm going to stir this around, and I'm so bummed I didn't have chopsticks. So please forgive me for using the all-American fork. That's like so wrong, right? But I'm just going to mix it in a little bit, and then I'm going to put a little bit of rice vinegar and then just a tiny bit of mustard, because again, the mustard is so common in the way that the typical Japanese eat it. But I love the fact that they have it for breakfast. First thing in the morning, have a nice big serving of umami. So a little bit of avocado on the top. One of the other guys recommended cilantro, which I loved the idea, but I thought, well, maybe if people don't like cilantro, so I'm leaving that out. But right, I know it would really give it a strong, good flavor too, one that we're really familiar with.
So you have to do all this dressing up to it, like.
No, I mean
Oh.
a lot of
It's
folks.
just these beans on rice. That's it.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
In fact, that's how I want to taste it.
right.
No. I mean, that looks delicious. What you're doing with it, like that looks.
Well, because I want you to have a good first experience for sure. But the most simple experience, I'm gonna do a little bit of rice vinegar, and I'm gonna dress another one up with a little bit of heat. So I'm gonna open this one. I think I already did this one. I'm gonna do one more.
Stir it for you if you want while you.
No, that's okay. I appreciate it. I think we're good, because I'm just gonna do one more. So notice when it comes out, the strands are a little more gooey, right? And it's not until I stir it.
Like an Asian delicious word.
Do you
Yeah.
store that in the refrigerator?
Yes, definitely need to refrigerate it. So, and of course, I'm not going to give it its 100 stirs, but I'm going to get close to getting the idea. So, who eats menudo in here? Nobody eats menudo? Once a year?
Like Sprite and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I mostly like the
Why you ask?
Well, because, why do I ask? I'm so glad you said that, Jose. Because menudo takes getting used to, And so a lot of the other chefs that I spoke with, not Beautiful Anne, but some of the other ones that were trying to get used to this whole idea.
But if it doesn't look appetizing, though, I mean,
Well, and so it's really relative. Menudo to me does not look appetizing. And so I would say no thank you right away.
that's just like pho or pho or whatever.
Right?
It just looks like it's just everything but the kitchen.
So here I'm putting a little bit of ginger, and again, a little bit of lemon. I'm going to do a little bit of sriracha. What's that?
Where's the kick?
The
Oh,
kick,
sriracha.
right here. So ginger, sriracha, a little bit of lemon juice. Let me get this open all the way. Yeah, fresh ginger would be really great. Okay, so that's this one. So this one's got lots of good flavors, lots of good combination. And then I'm gonna do one more with a little bit more of the curry. So a normal serving, like I mentioned, the Japanese stores will sell a serving that's about twice this amount. And that would be a normal serving. And
Japanese, I mean, like any Asian, like food grocer, like what did you purchase yours?
I had to order it online.
Oh,
Came from New York.
oh,
And remember, this is really like the gourmet, top of the line stuff. This was pricey. And the Japanese ones are going to be inexpensive, easy to get, frozen, not fresh, not made by a, super foodie microbiologist. And that's why I'm guessing I don't need to stir it as much, because see how it right away just really
So if
pops.
we went to a Japanese restaurant, we ordered
Yes.
Probably
Yes.
not, it's not commonly served.
No?
But
You don't think so?
Milano on Calais, it's a grocery store, you can buy it there.
I would have thought yes. But yeah, I guess it would have to be a unique one for sure. So that, and let's see, a little bit, I'm going to get a little bit of variety. And salt. I honestly felt like salt really did it. Does anybody eat oysters or, yeah?
I like smoked horse.
Now see, I think those are so yucky.
I'm not
So-
on the half. I like the smoked.
I like
that
it
is
fresh,
good.
I like it fresh.
And that's a weird texture, girl. And that's a weird flavor.
I love oysters.
I love-
And slimy. All the descriptions you've mentioned of this humble
I love-
little
I'm a
peasant
super
food called
Maryland,
natto.
so it's
Oops.
like, I do crab. I don't do crawfish.
I love it. Well, now that I've done all the mixing, and these bowls are really traditional, I think, size for Japanese food. Remember, I love that Japanese eat small amounts, right? They never overeat. And I think that's a really, right? They're dainty. Yeah. And when they start to become Americanized, what happens? They get heart disease, they get obesity and diabetes, and darn it, they probably stop eating natto.
Is that jasmine rice?
Yes, and okay, good point. I also cook my jasmine rice with star anise and a bay leaf and Himalayan sea salt. So nothing common around here. So thank you so much for joining me, and let's have some samples of natto.
Yeah, but it starts.